practice group, whose group has been putting together the resource desk. They've done a great job of incorporating a lot of our needs as well as the needs of the recap office in processing these RAD applications. So they're been super supportive and helpful. They're also the people that answer your emails when you email the RAD resource desk. So a number of you have probably talked to Robert or someone on his staff. And I guess before we get going, Robert, you want to say hi?
Sure, yes, Robert Robinson here. Thanks, Chad. And I know that Chad and I were speaking earlier, and Lindsay Reams is also on the line and may not be able to be with us too long. But Lindsay, I unmuted you in case you wanted to say something.
Thanks, Robert. Just want to thank everyone for participating. This is a next step for us as well. Many of you have used parts of the resource desk, but I think you'll learn new parts of the resource desk that will continue to be really important to us in public housing as we engage in the transaction process after chat to closing. So just wanted to say welcome, to thank you guys for participating, and thank Robert for spending some time again with us to go over the resource desk.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. And Lindsay, as long as you're on, if you want to say something, just raise your hand, and I'm happy to unmute you. So, yeah. So as Chad and Lindsay both mentioned, our team has designed and built the resource desk for HUD's use, and so far we've had, I think, lots of success. The idea behind the resource desk is it gives the HUD staff and the public housing authorities and their staff, including outside consultants that they use, the opportunity to process transactions together. As many of you are aware, the HUD systems are not particularly friendly to third parties logging in and sharing information and documents, which is a good thing for government security, but not so great when you're trying to use lots of different platforms to process transactions. So that's ultimately the design of the resource desk, and hopefully it will help serve you all well. I know that some of you have used the resource desk already. Some of you are new to the resource desk, and so hopefully today we'll be able to tap both of those expertises and get your questions answered that you might have moving forward. So Chad and I are going to be doing most of the presentation, so we'll be bouncing things back and forth. But what I wanted to do first was to just make sure that everyone is aware of how the GoToMeeting works. Basically, you all are all on mute, and so if you have a question, there's a little button that allows you to raise your hand. And so if you can hit that button, raise your hand, I will see your hand raised and we'll be happy to call on you. Unfortunately, if you've called in from your computer and you don't have a microphone, that audio feature is not available to you, so you might want to hang up and call in. You also need to put in an audio pin to allow me to unmute you. So just a little bit of housekeeping there. You also can type in questions. Those are a little bit more difficult for us to answer because I have to kind of pause and take a read through of them. But if ultimately that's the only way you can do it, please feel free to do that as well. So hopefully everybody's able to see my screen. What I'm going to do now is kind of start the presentation of the resource desk, and then I'm going to give Chad opportunities to kind of chime in at various places. What I wanted to do in this presentation is give you kind of two looks at the resource desk. One look would be from kind of a manager's view, so Chad's view, Lindsay's view, your field office director's view, and then we'll drill down into an actual PIH staff member's view. And for those of you that are PIH reviewers on transactions, this will be very familiar to you. For those of you who have done some looking at other ones, or you have access to look at things, you'll be familiar with that. So, but just two different views so that everyone can kind of see how this works across those platforms. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to log in as Chad. So hopefully everybody saw what I did there on the resource desk main screen. I hit the login button. Now I've gone to type in my username and password. So I'll type go ahead and go log in. So this page is the same for everybody, this kind of main page, broken up into a couple of sections. The main section, which we'll talk about in a minute, the RAD knowledge base, which I'm going to come back to in just a second, and then the reporting. Chad is able to see a lot more reports than most people can see. So that's one distinction that I want to make sure that everyone gets from this part of the presentation, is that there are lots of reports for lots of different people, and then different people have different accesses to those various reports. And we want to make sure we spend a bunch of time with Chad and Lindsay and others and making sure that the reports that are built out for your all's use work for you all. And so we'll talk about those reports in a little bit of depth later. But as we continue to evolve the RAD program, ideas for additional reports or modifications to report definitely should filter through Chad. I'm sure he'd be happy to hear your thoughts and feedback on that. But right now we have a base set of reports that we think are going to work for you. A couple of things I wanted to point out. The RAD knowledge base, this is a nice feature of the resource desk that allows all users, you and the other HUD employees in the recap office that are processing these transactions, multifamily staff, anybody in HUD that has access to the resource desk, as well as outside parties, to search documents that are on the resource desk. Now, depending on what kind of access you have, you get different results. So if I am just with the general public and I don't have any access at all, I can still search the resource desk, but I only get access and answers from things that are made available to the entire universe of the public. And then as I log in and get different accesses, then I can see different things. So PHAs, for example, can see things that are marked as PHA viewable. Public housing folks can see things that are available only to the public housing folks, and similar to the recap office. And so that's often a good way to share information. So I've got a volume trailing off. Okay, I'm just checking some quick questions here. All right. Yeah, so one of the things that one of your colleagues is saying is to make sure that you have your volume turned up on your speakers on your computer. So apparently we're fading in and out at the moment, so I'm trying the best I can. Usually our Polycom here in the office does pretty well, so hopefully you all are able to hear us. So anyway, back to the resource desk. We do have some key words at the top that you can search. So if you see something that is kind of common right now, that there's a lot of discussion about environmental reviews, and so you could do a search of the resource desk on environmental, or you could type in things that you wanted to type in. For example, if you wanted to get some information on EPC contracts, for example, you could type in EPC, do a search, and anywhere that EPCs are mentioned, my goodness, there's lots of them. So you've got 25 different web questions that have been asked about EPCs, and so here they all are. So that's kind of how that searching function works. It's something that I use a lot. It's something that we often encourage the PHAs to use as they're getting used to the RAD program. There's a ton of information, and going there first rather than trying to ask somebody else or going through the chain and getting stalled at this or somebody doesn't know that. Going to the resource desk and asking the knowledge base is always a good place to start. Another place for you all to go is under the main selections is the document library. This is also another tremendous resource with lots of information about the RAD program specifically. So at the top there are lots of different documents. One of the ones that we've been shepherding around recently, and I know we're going to talk about today, are some of these PIC removal instructions. So here you can see that there are instructions for the PHAs, there are internal instructions for HUD staff. There's all kinds of different stuff on the standard operating procedures flowchart that Robert Dalzell and his staff put together. So you've got lots of information here for you to look at. There are also some desk guides that the recap office has been working on putting together, so that if you're new to RAD or looking for kind of how it works inside of RAD, these various pieces can give you some information about that. And then lastly, this section here has been hugely helpful to PHAs in particular who are getting close to completing their conversion and actually are looking for closing documents and questions around closing and closing checklists. So you get lots of attorneys and PHAs particularly looking at this section to get the various documents that they need to close their transaction. So those are some kind of general useful locations for you all to know to go to on the resource desk, so I wanted to point those out first and foremost. Okay. So then, again, I've logged in as a manager, and so managers see, again, lots of reports. They also see, when they go to look at a transaction, specific transaction, when they click on My PHA Libraries, where those transactions live, they have a different view here. And so what you're going to see when it comes up is a list of states. So since most RAD managers can see all of the transactions that are currently in process, almost 1,000 transactions, instead of doing it just a laundry list or alphabetical list, what we have done is created a list alphabetically, or not, I think actually it's alphabetical by the name of the housing authority, which is the best we could do. Some had suggested using the PHA number. We could certainly resort it, but so far this has worked. And then all of the housing authorities in Alabama, for example. So if I were to be interested in looking at one in particular, let's say I want to look and see what's going on with Birmingham, then I see here are their active properties that they have in the RAD program. They haven't closed any transactions yet. If they had, they would show up here. And they also haven't withdrawn any properties yet. Okay. So again, this is a unique look through the manager's view, because the managers are simply looking up information. They're not actually doing any of the work. And so this is how a manager would get to a PHA that they're interested in. So let's go real quick to one that has a closed transaction, just so you can see what that would look like. You can see a little bit more expanded view. So here we've got Pinellas County. They've actually got no active transactions. They've closed a transaction, and then they've withdrawn a transaction. So managers can then look and see if there's something that they're interested in looking at from the closed transaction. They can click on that, and they can get the information on that particular property here. And we're going to look at these pages a little bit more in depth in a minute. But you can see that they have some of the historical information if they needed to look at that. Similarly, with a withdrawn property, you can also get to the archive piece of that. Chad, any other things that from a manager perspective you wanted to highlight for your staff so that they know that they're looking at what they're looking at?
Yeah. So two things that I think are really important are on the on that front page there, and you guys have put these together recently for us: the PIH active and closed CHAP awardees, and then the PIH active CHAP summary. And I mean, I don't know if you want to open them up, if that will slow this down, but I think both of these, this active and closed CHAP awardees, if you're a field office director, or if you're working on this for a network perspective, this is really the key spot I would go to get a quick summary of exactly which housing authorities in your field office have CHAPs, active CHAPs or closed CHAPs, and then you'll see that there's different warning flags along the way, or conditions that folks can raise, and things like the PIC certification. You can see all of that, and whether there's a flag or there's an issue out there through these reports.
Great. Yeah, so a couple things while this report is loading up. There's an awful lot of data that's getting pulled, which is one of the reasons that some of these reports take a little bit longer. This particular one is all of the active and closed CHAPs, so this is everything on the resource desk that we're pulling at the same time. So a couple things to note. If you're using Internet Explorer, that's fine, but know that there are some issues with that, particularly around opening documents and opening reports. My advice to anybody that's using Internet Explorer would be, don't open the report or the document directly from the resource desk. Always, when given an option, save the document down, either to your desktop or a RAD folder, or however you manage your computer. But save that report down and let the report open up. So you can see that we're using Chrome here at the office, and the document just loaded up and is saved over here in the corner. So I'm going to open it in just a second. Mozilla and Chrome both allow you to open the documents a little bit more seamlessly. If you are having problems, the first thing to do is to don't open them directly from any browser and just save them down. But I think that luckily Chrome will work for us. So I'm going to open that up now. And whenever you get a warning flag like this, I'm sure you all have opened these before. It is a trusted source, so you can open up the document. These reports, most of the reports that we have built can either be a PDF or an Excel. In this report in particular is an Excel format because Chad and others have expressed interest in being able to kind of sort and modify these reports. And so that's why this one is built out in Excel. So Chad, you want to kind of walk through this one for folks? Chad, did we lose you? All right, well, Chad may be on mute, so we'll come back to him. But this is a report that we worked on. We've modified it a number of different times. A couple of things for you in the field to know. There's the RAD PIC development number is the number that I know all of you in the field are familiar with. This is the number that's assigned to each AMP. In the RAD program, there are certain cases where that number is modified. And luckily for me, as an example, it's at the very first one. So this particular Cambridge Housing Authority transaction has been broken up into about 5 different chaps and 5 different closings. And so what's happened here is the report is showing all of them on here. And so there's one unique AMP number, but then you've got some distinctive RAD PIC numbers for each of the various transactions that are being processed. I know one of the things that Chad added to this report recently, which he mentioned a second ago, were these flags. So I'm going to scroll out here to the end so that you all can see those. And we're going to look a little more closely at how these get populated from the resource desk. But for example, AMPs that have been issued with a conditional CHAP would show up on this. We're hoping to get a list from the public housing headquarters staff of existing CFFP, OFFP, and EPC loans so that this can be pre-populated for you on the field. These are various loans that can cause issues or further work and further approvals that are needed through a RAD conversion. So it's important for you all in the field to be able to see these and to highlight where these are problems, and then work with the RAD recap office transaction managers to get these cleared as they're moving to financing plan and ultimately to conversion.
Robert, I'm sorry, I dropped off. I'm still learning how to work a phone, apparently. But,
okay.
So first, I know that there's a lot here for people, so this might seem like there's just so much information, but I think the idea behind this is that you would only need one report, and you can call out from here anything that you need. So a few other fields that I would focus on if I were, doing this from a field office director perspective is that PIC certification date. Robert, I know you'll go into how to enter that date in a little bit, but if you just really quickly want to see which PHAs or which CHAPs in your office still need a PIC certification date entered, this is a real easy way to do it because you'll see if it's blank, that's one that needs a PIC certification. And then the other thing that I would focus on is some people have asked questions about how to tell if a PHA has a choice mobility exemption, and that's also available here, one of the earlier columns. And you can also tell whether the PHA plans to convert to project-based vouchers or project-based rental assistance under the subsidy type column. So there's a lot of good information here again, and I think another thing that's also helpful is to see first who the transaction manager is, just in case you're curious or you're not familiar, who the PIH reviewers are. And we'll get into this, I think, with the next section, but these are the people who are going to have actual right privileges. So right now we've been doing this all from kind of the director read-only perspective, but these PHA reviewers would be able to go in and enter this information. And then you can also see, if you're trying to do this, trying to get an understanding of when we expect these to close, you can see that from right here as well. So you can kind of hopefully plan your workload a little bit and see, which ones are more urgent are probably the ones that are hoping to close sooner and don't either have flags or don't have that PIC certification date in there.
Perfect. Great. Thank you, Chad. Very helpful. So yeah, I think that's a really good report for you all to use. The active CHAP summary report, Chad, is another one that we added. I think this is a little bit smaller of a report, and it's like a subset of that report in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't I don't know if you need to go through it right now, but it's basically, it's just a shorter version. The idea behind this one was these are only active. So the other one had active and closed chaps, so you could see the whole portfolio. These are only active. And again, it provides a lot of the same information with the focus on where there's an outstanding issue. So like if there's any kind of condition flag that's been raised, those are things that would potentially stop it from going to closing or getting an RCC. And so those would be things that we would hope the transaction manager and the field office reviewer would focus on as we get closer to those dates.
Right. So Chad, I've got a couple of questions here, so I'm going to go ahead and take a moment. And we've got Johnson, and I'm going to just destroy this last name, Batapor? Johnson, are you on? Johnson, if you got your phone on mute, you need to unmute. I've unmuted you from here. All right, we'll come back there. I've got Matt Lord. Matt, are you on? Matt, hello. All right, so I don't know why they're not able to speak. Let's go.
They might have been wanting to ask, so how would they get access? And correct me if I'm wrong, but the way we've been trying to take care of this read-only type access is by them just sending an email to the RAD resource desk and asking for it, basically.
Right, read-only access is easy. It's when you need specific access to a specific PHA, that's when they need to go through you, Chad. So if they're going to become the PIH reviewer, that sort of thing, they need to come through you. But yeah, the resource desk, if all you want is, you know, general access to the resource desk, just send an email to the resource desk and we can get that done for you. So I've got James Moore. Let's see if I can get James unmuted. James, are you there? James?
Hello?
There you go. Hey, James.
Hey, how you doing? I just had a question about a couple of the reports. I just wanted to know when the information was updated. I know I looked in one report and the expected closing date had passed and the RCC expected date was in the future. So I know there was some lag time between the new revised notice coming out, some PHAs on hold, and some of those dates being shifted. But some of the information, I was just curious as when it was up, when is it updated to show a more accurate date?
Right. So the idea, James, great question. So the idea is that the data is all live. So the reports are all going off of live data. And so the example that you're giving would be potentially a data entry issue because the transaction managers can actually enter the expected RCC dates and the expected closing dates and those sorts of things into the system. The system generates those dates automatically when the transaction first starts, but then as the transaction starts moving along, the transaction managers can make changes, and I'm going to show you that in just a second on where that lives. But so in cases where the dates are out of sync, so you've got a closing date that's in the past and the transaction hasn't closed yet, for example, there are some exception reports that the managers have started to use to flag those, to let their TMs know to go back and update those dates. So hopefully that's getting cleaned up.
Thank you.
Yes. Great. All right. So let's go now that we've kind of, so Chad, this is your kind of active only report. It does have some of the same fields, a few fewer fields than the other report, but I think it's a little bit more concise. Is that what you're striving for there?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So between the two, I guess just to recap, if you're a field office director or you're working on this from the network perspective or for your field office, this should be a very simple first step, is just to get access to this and go review those two reports, and you can quickly see, you know, exactly what's going on with your area.
Perfect. All right, so we are now going to log in as a public housing reviewer. So here's a PIH reviewer that we're going to log in as, and we'll see what Jennifer sees when she logs in. So as I mentioned before, very similar screen to what Chad and the managers see, but just certainly condensed. We've got the reports showing up here, a lot fewer reports, but the two that we just looked at are here. They're available to everybody in public housing that has access to the resource desk. Again, the knowledge base is there. The document library is also there. But the main distinction is going to be when I click on my PHA libraries to kind of get into quote unquote my work on this site. So there are a couple of different screens that can show up here. Always the withdrawn and closed. I don't think Jennifer has any withdrawn or closed transactions, so she's not going to have any listed there. But if she did, they would show up there. And two different categories up here. Jennifer only has the 185,000 unit cap that she's working on. But if you were working on a transaction that would be quote unquote round one, so the initial 60,000, you would have a separate blue bar there that would expand those, and you could look at those separately. Okay. So when I'm Jennifer and I decide I want to look at my under 185, I'll pull it up and I see that I've been assigned 2 PHAs. Okay. So we've got 2 PHAs with 2 transactions, it looks like. So we're going to take a look at the family AMP here for Burlington Housing Authority. So this is a live transaction. Jennifer and I are working through this one. You'll see that my staff are working through it as the financing transaction manager. Monique works here with me at FPG, and so we are the transaction managers for this one. Tina Dudley was the readiness TM, so the readiness TM has finished her work, and she's now moved it forward, and the PHA was ready to submit for a financing plan, which we're in the middle of reviewing right now. So one of the things that Jennifer has to do in her work in the public housing arena is to take a look at a couple of these boxes here. So the first one that's important for her to look at is the email certification of PIC removal. There's been a bunch of emails about this and kind of what the steps are for PIC removal and how the SAC is involved in emails and various documents that have to go back and forth. And so I'm going to assume that that training's being done away from this. But this is where the reporting of that happens. So you can see that the certification for the PIC removal in the non-dwelling units was completed on the 29th of September. And there was a file that was uploaded, which is the certification of the non-dwelling units, which is this certification template completed for Vermont. So that's there. We are making this viewable, so once it's downloaded, you can actually click on it from this page and view it. Right now, you can't view it from here. You have to view it from another location. So anyway, someone has also asked if you can put multiple files in. You can. If you upload the wrong one, you can put another file here. But this is a critical piece for these transactions right now. The PIC removal process is supposed to start within 30 days of CHAP award. So most every one of these transactions is well past that date. And so the PIC removal should have been submitted to the SAC, and the field office reviewers should be doing their non-dwelling units review and that sort of thing. Should be happening. Then this next box here is kind of where I think most of your focus will be. In this particular case, the annual plan or significant amendment, the annual plan approval has been completed. That was completed on the 28th of July, actually, so a long time ago. If there was an additional approval document that was required that the field office wanted to upload, that could be uploaded here. I'm going to show you where the document that was loaded by the PHA lives in just a minute, but this would be a location where you would have something for the field office to load here. If there had been conditions on this CHAP, this flag would say, yes, conditions exist, and those conditions would be listed down here. In this particular case, there aren't any conditions on this one. As I mentioned before, CFFP, OFFP, and EPC, all of these currently are blank because we're waiting on an upload to get these pre-populated. I do know in this particular case that these conditions don't exist, so we probably should go through and select no, that the condition doesn't exist because it doesn't exist at the property, or it's not applicable one way or the other. But but these would be flagged if they did exist, and then you in the field offices would be doing your work to get that condition cleared. There's a place for you to put comments for each of these various conditions if you need to take notes. There's also a place at the top for you to put notes. So in this particular case, you can see that Jennifer put in notes to herself and any HUD staff that the kickoff call was held. These notes are not viewable by the PHA. These are internal notes that only are seen by HUD staff. So the PIH reviewer or the TMs. Okay. Chad,
Robert,
you want to talk? Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's just two quick things I wanted to point out. They're a little bit higher up on the screen, but the date of the relocation checklist approved by HUD and the date of the site and neighborhood selections, that's something that the field reviewer doesn't have to worry about populating, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, and sorry about that, Chad. Yes, so that is going to be filled out separately. The dates will actually still show up here so that you know that they've been done, but they will not be populated by the field office.
And then,
go ahead.
So just one more thing, sorry to cut you off, but for the annual plan and significant amendment to the annual plan, that will automatically, for all those, I mean, I see that Jen has been working on hers, but for many of them right now, it's probably default to yes. And so that's kind of a trigger saying we still need that thing to, someone to go in there and physically change it to no, to enter that date as well, so that we can tell that that issue has been cleared, right?
Yes. And did you want to talk about the PIH RAD risk indicator piece at the bottom, Chad?
I'd love to. So one other thing too is the CFFP, OFFP, and EPC. Although we want to get those pre-populated, I think in the interim, and Robert, please tell me if this will screw anything up, but in the interim, I think if you are working on a PHA and you know that there is an issue with an EPC or an OFFP or a CFFP, you can go ahead and mark that as a condition exists, yes, and at least then you know from the PIH side we're tracking it. So we're hoping to get it pre-populated, but if you're working on a PHA and you know that there's an issue, please go in there and mark it yes.
Yeah, and then similarly, I think it'd be helpful to mark them NA if you know that they don't exist. So, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And then the PIH risk indicator is, we'll talk more about this in future calls, but basically what we've created is a matrix of all the other things that folks should be thinking about when they're working on a RAD transaction. So it's a number of questions, just different potential problems that we've seen and we want people to be considering. And so as you look through the list and you're working with the PHA, if you see one of these issues come up, we would want you to mark that as a condition exists yes. And regardless, we'd like you to use that matrix and upload it here so that you create a log of the things that you've already reviewed. So once we'll send you all a link to how to get to this list and send you more information on it. But this is where you would actually go in and flag these risk indicators if you see one that exists. And then once you flag it, we'll work with you to first dig into the issue a little bit more and see how it might impact the transaction. And then once we're able to clear it, we'll go in and work with you to get that PIH approved or condition cleared date entered in.
Great. So you'll see that I have changed these to NA, and so one of the things that you want to do as a PIH reviewer is you'll want to hit this save button in order to make sure that everything that we've done there is saved. Okay.
And one more thing, so I've been harassing a number of people to get them to get this field office contact TM log information entered in, and that's why I need this information, is to get people this access to this page. And so we have this reviewer, PIH reviewer 1 and PIH reviewer 2. Right now the system is capped at having 2 PIH people that can actually go in and make physical changes to any given PHA's PIH summary page like this. And the way we're controlling who does that is by looking at who has their name entered in by that field office contact TM log. And so that's just how I'm kind of managing the process. If you're working with a PHA, hopefully you already are PIH reviewer 1 or PIH reviewer 2, but if you're not, let me know, or just go into the log yourself and enter your name, and then we'll make sure to get that to Robert and his team so that you can be given this access to make these changes.
Definitely, definitely. So James, you got another question for us, James Moore.
Yes, sir. On the PHA template, some of the stakeholders use the template that's uploaded to the RAD resource desk, and then others require a more precise and complete letter on letterhead for the non-dwelling unit certification. And for the significant amendment, my question about the significant amendment is, now specialists use a template to prepare the significant amendment. Are the PHAs given a template to go by so that the information they submit with the significant amendment matches the template, the matrix that the specialist uses to review to make sure it complies with the notice and the RAD requirements?
Chad, you want to take those?
I'll take the first part, which I think dealt with the PIC certification, and I think there's two different things. The PIC certification on non-dwelling assets, and then there's also a non-dwelling certification form that the PHA actually fills out to help folks, in the field office do that PIH certification. So, for this purposes, whatever's in that certification template works. I think you could have additional language. The key here is, that we're just making sure, really this is the way the field office is saying, yep, we've reviewed all this stuff and it all seems to line up. And so, I don't think we have to be super particular about what language is in that upload, as long as it kind of matches or at least covers the same basis of what's in the certification template. But I think when you're talking about letterhead, I think that's you're actually maybe talking about what the PHA is submitting to HUD.
No, I'm talking about what some of the transaction managers are requesting as proof of the non-dwelling unit certification in lieu of the template that's on the RAD resource desk.
And I think Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there is some confusion because there was an old way to do this, and now there's a new way to do it. And so I think some of the transaction managers, the old way was a more detailed review, and they were more involved in it. And now the public housing field offices are doing these reviews, and the TMs are not as involved. At least that's my read of the standard operating.
Right, and that's the dilemma that I'm facing now.
Yeah. So Chad, I mean, from where I sit, Robert and his staff put together the new procedures, and I think that the new procedures should be the ones people are using. But
yeah, I think you're exactly right, and maybe I think this might bring up a bigger issue, which is if you have these type of questions come up, and it seems maybe not in alignment with what you're used to or what we've been explaining, you can always just shoot me an email or work with your network RAD SME, and we can figure out what's going on there. So I think right now this certification template should be sufficient, and we might just need to work with TMs and maybe get a better understanding of what they were expecting.
And I do shoot an email to you and my SME, and I've gotten back quick responses and answers to my questions, so that works out great.
James, thank you. Chad, that was great. So one of the things that I wanted to also show you here is that, so we've just talked about kind of this page, and this is where the work that you and the field offices are doing your pieces. But you can also see what's going on generally with the transaction. And so wanted to bounce through those for you just so you could see what was happening elsewhere. So if I click on the PHA summary page, and there's a button up here if I'm in this top part, or there's a button down here if I'm in this bottom part, clicks me back to here, and I can go, oops, sorry, I want to go, so the PHA summary takes me to where the readiness transaction manager is doing their work. And so in conjunction with the work that you're doing in the field office to kind of move this transaction along, your counterpart in the recap office, the readiness transaction manager, is doing their part to get this PHA ready to submit their financing plan. So in this particular case, Tina Dudley was working to get this PHA to submit their plan. You can see that she held a couple of check-in correspondence calls with them. She had some email back and forth explaining a variety of things. The resource desk captures the last two correspondence here, but if you want to see more, you can hit the View History button, and that allows you to see the whole history of the correspondence that's going on. And I'm struggling with my mouse here, but then you can see that's a little bit more legible to see the various correspondence. So these correspondence are shared directly with the Public Housing Authority, so they see these comments. If there's something wrong in these comments, they can email back to the resource desk and say, yeah, no, in fact, we didn't commit to do this in this period of time. We committed to do this in this period of time. So it's a place where you kind of have an administrative record of what the PHAs have been told to do, what they've agreed to do, and that sort of thing. Then similarly to the PIH comments, this Readiness TM comment section is only viewable to HUD, but it allows the Readiness TM to make some comments that can be shared back and forth with either you and the field, public housing field offices, or potentially with the financing transaction manager who is going to take this transaction over potentially from the Readiness TM when the transaction is ready to move to progress along. So how does that happen? So one of the things that you have here on this page, and this is where the Readiness TM is doing their work, there's a little section here at the bottom with all of the various pieces that are considered to be kind of critical to moving the transaction along to get it to the financing plan stage. These all are rolled up into what's called the Readiness Checklist. This checklist is something that the Readiness Transaction Manager completes in order to assure that the PHA is ready to actually submit the transaction in. You can see that the Readiness Transaction Manager completed her checklist on the 22nd of September. So that meant that this thing was ready to go forward, and the PHA was ready to submit their financing plan. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. So once the Readiness TM has finished their work, the financing TM is assigned. In some cases, the person who was the Readiness Transaction Manager may very well be the financing transaction manager. But regardless, the potential exists for there to be different folks. And in this particular case, Tina handed her work off to Monique, who has been going through this transaction, and so it's just been submitted actually for approval. But you can see that the PHA has submitted their documents. We're going to click on the financing plan so you can see what it looks like. Since I'm logged in as a public housing field office staff member, I can't type or change any of these areas. They're all grayed out. The readiness and financing plan TMs can make changes here, and so they're able to make those changes so that you would see what numbers were put in by them. This is kind of just a quick and dirty look at what the review for a financing plan looks like. All of these various documents, these grids vary depending on what kind of transaction it is. This particular transaction is either no debt or conventionally financed. I can tell you that it's actually a no debt transaction. There's no financing in this one. So all of these various pieces are either required, or in the case where they're not applicable, the PHA or the transaction manager could click the not applicable button. All of the documents that are necessary for the approval are submitted here. And so this is the place where the financing TM and the PHA can go back and forth if there are questions. In this particular case, the transaction was fairly clean, and there wasn't really a need to go back and forth with them. So that's kind of where that laid out. So then if I wanted to go back to where I was before, I would return to my property listing, and then I would go back to the PIH summary page. So again, I'm logged in as Jennifer, and so I'm seeing the work that she's doing, but that's a way to look at the other pieces of the puzzle for this particular transaction. So no questions at the moment. Chad, other things that you wanted to look at, touch on, wanted me to expand upon?
You know, I think what might be helpful is just to clarify for some folks, even if you're not a PIH reviewer officially, so even if you don't have write access, you will still have, I mean, as long as you say, you know, I work for this office or whatever, you would still get read access to this information. So this page that Jennifer has is still, you know, if you were in the Boston field office and helping with RAD, you could still see this. You just wouldn't be able to edit it.
That's
right,
correct.
Robert?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, only two reviewers per transaction can make comments. So if you're a read-only access, you would see these would be grayed out. There'd be no selections, just like on the property milestones page where I showed the HUD review here, would be very similar. You'd see the dates, you'd see the comments, but it would be grayed out. All right, so
it
Melina,
might be good.
Hold on, Fi. So Melina, you're trying to ask a question. You need to. So Melina, if you're trying to, I can't unmute you because you don't have the audio pin. So if you could enter the audio pin, I'd be happy to unmute you. Anita, let's see if I can. So Anita, I've unmuted you. I don't know whether it's going to work or not, but if you want to give it a try. Anita Short. No, we haven't had a lot of luck with the computer microphone selection, which is what this looks like. So Anita, if you wanted to call in to the access number on your screen and enter your audio pin, we'd be able to unmute you. Or you can type your question in, is also fine. Sorry, Chad.
No, I was just going to say, just to recap, I think one key thing that folks are going to be asked to do right away is to begin entering that PIC removal email certification date. And so I know you've gone over this already, but maybe if you just remind everyone where that is on the screen.
Right. So yeah. So we're on the PIH page. Let's go to the other one here. Let's see the other one we got here. She's got. Let's go back to her main page so that we're not looking at the same transaction again. So let's take a look at the other transaction. So for Springfield Housing Authority, we don't have the PIC removal certification. So this would be the place where Jennifer would go in and she can click on the calendar and enter that date. Just so you all know, you don't have to do it the day that you get it. So the system lets you go in and backdate these. So if you don't have a chance to go in or you're on vacation or whatever happened, you can go back in and put the date. But it's important to get the actual date of that email certification, which again is this template, which we talked about a minute ago. So you want to get that. Then when you put the date in here, you're also going to want to click the Choose File button, which will pull up your desktop with your documents, your files. So wherever you put that file, you'll select it and upload the document. So that's how that particular certification gets uploaded and dated.
And I think this is also a good example where this one still is showing an open condition for outstanding annual plan or significant amendment. So this indicates that, for all we know, the PHA has not addressed this yet. And so in order to close it, we would want to physically switch that from condition exists no, and then choose the file and enter the date. Right.
That's correct. Yeah. So what Jennifer's going to do here is that she'll want to, when she gets the approval, she'll want to change this to no. She'll want to put the date in here, and then since she's controlling it, she'll choose the file similar up here and upload that approval document here.
And then one more thing quick on the RAD risk indicator. Like I said, we'll send out another note on what's exactly in there. But there are a number of items that we kind of try to suggest a time frame for review. And so there's a number of things that are, as soon as you have the kickoff call, which for almost all of you guys has already happened. So there's things you'll be able to start reviewing right away. There's a few things that would happen at the financing plan. I think the important thing to note is just to continue to look at that RAD risk indicator and update it and update this section as you're doing this and working with the PHA through the RAD transaction.
So Melina, I'm not seeing your hand re-raised, so if you wanted to type in your question, I hate to miss you. You always have good thoughts for us. I don't see any other hands up. There's your hand is again. So Melina, I'm still not seeing the ability to unmute you. If you want to type in your question, Melina, for us, I'm happy to read it out. Chad, you got anything else?
No, I guess only to remind folks that if if they missed any part of this, it will be recorded. And I guess, do you have a time frame of when it would be available on the RAD resource?
Yeah, so usually it takes us about just under a week. So I imagine the beginning of next week we'll have this up for folks. And there are also other, as I mentioned earlier, there are other documents and webinars that are posted for your all's viewing pleasure, so you can take a look at all that. But I imagine Monday or Tuesday this will be posted. So, Trevor, I've tried to unmute you, but I'm not sure that it worked. Trevor? Nope. That computer muting doesn't seem to work very well. Again, if you wanted to type your question in, Trevor, we're happy to answer it.
What I can also do too is we have these within PIH, we have RAD office hours and opportunities for people to ask questions. And if anyone has questions about the RAD resource desk, I'm happy to elevate them to Robert, or maybe we might be able to answer them offline with you separately as well.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Well, Chad, you'll be happy to know that we broke your record of attendees. That the high water mark was 171 participants. So we had a nice group today.
That's great. And I guess I'm assuming that there's probably going to be a number of people that are asking for access. For the people who need PIH Reviewer 1 or Reviewer 2 access, again, just go into that log. I was going to wait another day or so and then just take a snapshot of that log and get it to Robert and his team so that you can all be entered in. But if you need access otherwise, like we said earlier, I think you can just email RAD Resource Desk, and Robert and his team can help you out.
So here we've got a question that says, you mentioned a form that is filled out by the PHA for the PIC removal process. Is that form on the resource desk somewhere? So the PIC removal process is specific to public housing, and there's like a PIC removal, or there's a PIC inside a PIC, right, Chad? So that document, there's not a form on the resource desk that I know of.
Right. What I would do for that is, so we just sent out a RAD update on the PIC removal process. If you go to the RAD SharePoint site, if you look, all of our prior updates are there. You'll see a quick summary of the training videos on that process and all the documents on that process. So it's probably going to be an easier way to go is we have our internal RAD SharePoint site. That would be where you'd go. And if anyone doesn't know where that is, just shoot me an email.
And just so you know, Chad and others on the call, we did upload the RAD the PIC removal instructions are on the resource desk, and I think we may have put the webinar as well. But certainly easier for you to use your own stuff if possible. So
lots of opportunities to get the information.
Right. So Chad, I think you touched on this already, but there's a question that says, is there a report that shows which PIH field office staff have access to this website and what level of access? So the Reviewer 1 and Reviewer 2, that right now we're tracking through that SharePoint log. So it's the field office contact and TM log. And we've asked the field office directors or folks working on RAD to go in and enter those field office contact names. So that's going to be who, they might not have access right now, but those will be the people who will be asking for access. As for the read access, I think you've probably worked that out on your own by emailing the RAD Resource Desk, and hopefully, if you've asked for access for your office or for your network, you can tell right now whether you can see your office or your network. That's right. Yep. So those that are having questions or issues around access, as Chad mentioned, if you're a PIH Reviewer 1 or Reviewer 2, go through him. And if you're looking for just general access to your office, shoot a note to the RAD Resource Desk, and we'll make sure that, for example, Boston, where Jennifer is located, we get you access to all the Boston transactions. All right, I've got no hands up and no more typed questions. And it's almost 4, so I think we did pretty well.
Thanks a lot, Robert.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate it. So, again, I think if you check on Monday or Tuesday, this should be up on the resource desk for people to view. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Chad, for helping out, and we look forward to having everybody have a pleasant experience on the resource desk. And if you have questions or concerns, go through Chad, send questions to the resource desk. We want you to use it. We want the experience to be good. So we're always making changes. Things get updated. So just, don't be shy. Thanks, everybody.